Hey guys, it's Katie. Welcome back to my channel. I am so glad that you're here. I am very excited for today's video. I feel like I say that for every single video, but I truly do mean it today because of course it is the end of the year. That's when everybody's talking about end of year wrap-ups, all the books they read, all that type of stuff. Today I'm specifically going to be talking about my favorite books of the year and again, specifically, my top 10 books of 2023. This was a hard list to compile. In total, so far anyways, I've read about 60 books for the year, which was my Goodreads goal, so I'm very glad that I met that. Also, as we're talking about goals and stuff like that, just remember that everybody reads at a different pace, everybody reads a different amount of books, everybody has a different set amount of free time or what they like to do with that free time. So just remember, whether I've read a lot less books than you or a lot more books than you, please don't feel bad about yourself because reading is such a subjective hobby and it's very personal to everybody as their own little reader. Anyways, I tried my best to go from like 10 all the way down to 1. I don't know if this is the exact order that I would probably have picked yesterday for this video, or if it's the same exact order that I would have picked tomorrow. So honestly, take the order very lightly. I definitely think that the top 3 or 4 are definitely like my die-hard faves, but the other ones where they're placed, just know that they're my favorites, and that's what matters. Coming in at number 10, we have one of BookTok's most popular books of the year. This one kind of came out of nowhere and stunned us all, and that is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This was actually the first book that I ever read with my book club, and we do buddy reading instead of like reading one book each month and then going to talk about it. And when I tell you, we read this book in 2 sittings. It was incredible. This book is a rivals to lovers romantasy, and it follows our 2 main characters, Iris and Roman, and you get both of their perspectives. And it is also the first book in the Letters of Enchantment duology. The second one is actually coming out on the 26th of December, and I'm so excited to read the second one. In this book, Iris and Roman both work for the same newspaper, and they're both interning to kind of get like a permanent spot there, and both fighting for the same spot. So that's kind of where like the rivals comes into play. And there's also some like magical typewriters, which is super cool. Basically, Iris ends up writing to somebody and then she gets a letter back and she didn't know her typewriter was magical. And as we go along, we figure out who the letters are from, which is very interesting. And there's so many good like little sprinkles of fantasy elements. I've heard that the second one is definitely going to be a lot more heavy into the fantasy elements of this world, but there is kind of like a war with the gods going on right now, and so that's like a huge plot point in here too. I don't really want to say anything else because if you haven't read this yet, I don't want to give anything away, but I absolutely love this book, and I would definitely say that it is more romance than fantasy. So if you're kind of on the fence about fantasy, haven't really given fantasy a chance yet, I would definitely read this as one of your first fantasy books. I actually have quite a few of those in here, and I would definitely say this is my most romantic book of the year. And Rebecca Ross's writing is so lyrical and beautiful. I found myself underlining so many quotes because they were just so heartbreaking, and also some of them were so beautiful. And the ending of this one like literally left my jaw on the floor. It left me in an awful book hangover because I could just like not stop thinking about this book. This next book I feel like is talked about here and there, but it really wasn't like super hyped up until the author came out with their second novel this year. The second novel being The 7-Year Slip, and the first one being The Dead Romantics, and they are both by Ashley Poston. I ended up reading this a few months ago and I just absolutely could not stop thinking about it. This book is basically about a girl named Florence Day, and she ghostwrites for like a famous author, and she writes romance novels, but she no longer believes in love because her ex-boyfriend was just like the worst. And all of a sudden, life kind of just stops as she knows it, and she has to go back to her hometown because a family member tragically passed away. And this book was so beautifully heartbreaking. I cried, I laughed. It was just so real and raw from the moment that it began. I loved our main character, Florence. I thought it was really just strikingly real how she went through everything, because obviously she was going through the stages of grief in this book. And there's also a little bit of magical realism too, which I actually really enjoyed. I will say, if you don't like magical realism, don't read this book, but I also think you should give it a shot because it was just so well done, and the romance in here is so good, but it's also not the entire plot. Her writing reminds me so much of Emily Henry, and I absolutely adore the way that Emily Henry writes, obviously enough, which you will see in here in just 2 seconds. But the fact that I found another romance author that can make me feel that way, I have no words. I haven't read The 7-Year Slip yet, but it probably would have been on this list if I had, because I'm waiting to read that with my book club, but I am so excited to read all of her releases from this point forward. Next up, we have a book that actually became a TV show this past year, and that is Daisy Jones and the Six. When I tell you, this is one of the most unique books that I have ever read. This book is basically about a band in like the 70s era and how it came to be. It's loosely based off of Fleetwood Mac and all of their drama that kind of happened, and I would definitely say that it's like a historical literary fiction with like a little bit of like sprinkles of romance. And one of the biggest reasons why this book is so unique is because we literally get the point of view of every single character in this book, even if we only get like a small little blurb from them, because it almost looks like it's written like a play. As you can see, there's just like a bunch of names on the side and then their dialogue, and I found it so interesting how that all played out, but it flowed so well and it read so quick just because you got to know each character's thoughts as they thought them. And especially with a lot of the attitudes that these characters have, some of them aren't very likable at times, but you like fall in love with them because they are just so real. Can you guys tell that I love the word real and whenever characters feel real in books? And also the story was really cool. You kind of got to live through their rock star life with them, and I found it really interesting. And again, I'd never really read anything like this, so I really loved it. And also Taylor Jenkins Reid is just a great author, and her writing was really good in this. And I listen to the music constantly from the show, and I think about these characters daily. Next up, we have yet another book that took the book talk world by storm, and I actually read this whenever I was kind of like falling off of its hype, and it is Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing. Fourth Wing is an enemies to lovers romantasy, and we all know we love the combo of enemies to lovers romantasy. It's top tier. This book is about a girl named Violet Sorrengail, and she trains her whole life to be a scribe, which is somebody that's like very smart. But in this world, there are dragon riders, and her mother's a dragon rider. The rest of her family was, besides her dad. And even though she has this like chronic illness, her mom forces her to become a dragon rider, which is something that kids literally train their whole lives to do. And they also die while they're in the school because it's just so high stakes of all the things that they do. I mean, they're literally riding dragons. But the training to even get to the point where you ride a dragon is just absolutely insane. And once you get to the part where you like meet the dragons and you see their inner dialogue and stuff like that, the dragons are like such a good part of these books. Like honestly, it makes them 1,000 times better, even though the book itself was also really, really great. So you basically just go through with Violet on her journey, the high stakes journey of learning to become a dragon rider and everything else that's going on in their world. There's also Xaden in this book that you hear everybody talking about, and he is a shadow slinger. Yep. This book was just the perfect mixture of spicy and fantasy and romance, and it was just kind of everything. I highly recommend it if you haven't read it yet. It was a very good read, and also for fantasy I felt like it was pretty easy. I feel like it wasn't too confusing either, even though there are so many like fantasy elements in these books. But it's just very well explained. It's written like a romance book, not written like a fantasy book where everything's kind of like confusing sometimes, even though like those books are still like great reads, and I love reading books that are like written like fantasy books. But fantasy books that are written like romance books are just a nice time because you don't feel very stupid, because a lot of the times I feel so stupid reading fantasy books. So yeah, anyways, read this if you haven't yet, even though the second one, we're not going to talk about it. I loved this book. It gave all the wholesome teen rom-com-y vibes, and that book is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I feel like this book has been talked about for so long because it's honestly just one of those staple book talk books that made a lot of people fall in love with reading again. This book is basically about a girl named Liz, and she loves rom-coms, so she sees her life as a rom-com, even though life obviously isn't a rom-com. And this guy that moved away whenever they were kids that she was absolutely in love with actually comes back to their school, and she's like, oh my gosh, like this is my moment, like this is what I've been waiting for, this is why my rom-com movie moments haven't happened yet. And she basically makes a deal with her neighbor Wes Bennett, which I love him so much. He is just such book boyfriend material. But Liz basically gets Wes to help her make her little rom-com movie moment come true with this other guy, and then along the way things happen, and it's just so cute to see how the relationships in this book come to be. And I wouldn't say that it's the most plot driven book. It's basically just about teenagers in high school. Like if you loved To All the Boys I Loved Before and those kind of movies, this feels like that, but in a book. I haven't read those books yet. I do want to, just to see if they kind of give off the same vibes, but it's just so wholesome and cutesy and happy, and also just brings you back to the time whenever you were a teenager and realizing like those feelings you had of like your first love. And I just absolutely love it. I love Lynn Painter's writing. I just read another YA rom-com by her too, Betting on You, that she just came out with. I absolutely love that one too. It's just, she does no wrong with YA rom-coms. If you haven't read one of hers yet, do it. Coming in at number 5 is another romance book that I just absolutely fell in love with this year. You'll see a lot of like original first read book talk books on here, just because I did start my reading journey in like the end of 2022, but I didn't start reading a lot of books until I got to 2023. I would say that I really started like cranking out more than one book a month in May, just because I absolutely fell in love with reading. Anyways, this book is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This is whenever I started to absolutely fall in love with Emily Henry's writing. This book is a contemporary romance about the characters Augustus and January. We get January's POV throughout the entire thing, but they're both basically writers and they're kind of in a writing slump right now. And they kind of make a bet or like a little challenge for themselves and decide to swap genres and see who can do it better. And in order to swap the genres, they take each other out on these little, almost like study dates, to figure out how they get in the mood for the writing and how they get inspiration for the writing. And it is just very cute. A book about book people is always very cute to me, and I honestly would reread this one because I kind of read it whenever I wasn't like super into reading yet, even though it is still like a 5-star. Like, this book had me sobbing and I absolutely fell in love with it, but I don't know, I just want to reread it because I think it'll hit a lot harder. Emily Henry, again, like I was saying earlier whenever I was talking about Ashley Poston's writing, her writing is just so real, her characters are so real, and they just bring so much to the table and make you feel such real and raw emotions, and I just absolutely love that about her writing. I definitely don't want to pick up one of her books unless I'm expecting to cry. I'm definitely gonna have to reread this year. Just Augustus and January, their relationship is just so cute and I absolutely loved it. I ate it up and it was just so cute and everything. These next 3, I'm not really sure on their order. I was kind of going back and forth on these 3 the most. You'll see I only have 3 books here too, and we have 4 books to go over. But the last one I actually don't have with me because my friend is borrowing it, because it is like, it is number 1, like no questions asked. And whenever I like love a book, I'm going to shove it down everyone I love's throats, respectfully, because I need them to read it, because I need people to talk about it with. So we'll talk about that one here in a second. I don't know why I just hit the wall. That was kind of weird. Anyways, coming in at number 4 is The Ballad of Never After by Stephanie Garber. If you've watched my channel at all, you know I absolutely love this book specifically and this series. So this is the second book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. The trilogy actually just got finished a few months ago. The last book just came out. And it's also in the same world as the trilogy that came out before it, which is the Caraval trilogy. And they're all in the Magnificent North, which is like a very fairy tale, fantasy-esque world. And again, kind of like I was saying with Divine Rivals, if you haven't really gotten into fantasy yet and you want to, I feel like this is a perfect gateway into fantasy, just because it is fairy tale. And also Stephanie Garber's writing is just so incredible. I'm not going to tell you what happens in this one because it's the second one, but these books in general are about a girl named Evangeline Fox, and she basically falls in love with this guy, and the next day he goes to marry somebody else, and she ends up going to cry at the Prince of Hearts, which is a fate, which is kind of like a god in their world. She's like, please, like, I need your help. I lost my love. Like, I don't know what happened. I think there's a spell on him. And basically her talking to him that one time leads to a whole nother journey that Evangeline was never expecting, nor was the reader. And the entire time that I read Stephanie Garber's writing, I never know what's gonna happen next. There's literally almost mystery elements in these, because if you guess something that's gonna happen, nope. Like, I would love to talk to somebody who has guessed the plot of these books, in all honesty, because if you truly did, you're a genius. Like, claps go to you, because I sure didn't. And I ate up every little bit of it. Like, literally the amount of times I gasped during all 3 of these books, I probably couldn't even count. And the Prince of Hearts, who is also named Jax, is one of my favorite characters in here. I also really loved Evangeline, who's the main character. She's just very young, and sometimes she makes the wrong decisions, but it's also, I don't know, the tension in this book between these 2 characters is absolutely insane, because it is also an enemies to lovers. If you're looking for tension to where they don't kiss until like the last few pages of the last book, read this immediately. Coming in at number 3 is Happy Place by Emily Henry. If you've watched my channel, again, you know that I absolutely adore this book. This book is another contemporary romance, and it's about the two main characters, Harriet and Wynne. Basically, they're engaged, and then they break their engagement, but they don't tell their friend group, and this friend group goes on trips every year to Maine, and since they don't tell them and they're all friends with them, they both end up on the trip and have to end up fake dating, which I think this is the book where I really learned that this is one of my favorite tropes, because I know that fake dating is in The Love Hypothesis, and I think that was one of my first books that I read with the fake dating trope, but this really solidified my love for fake dating. Wynne and Harriet, their chemistry is just so unmatched, and the fact that they would do literally anything for each other, but also, again, these characters are so real to me because it also talked a lot about the friendships in this book. Like I said, they go on trips with their friends every year, and the fact that like friendships change as you grow up. Like there are so many beautiful quotes in here about how you feel growing up and growing apart from your friends, and just, I don't know, it was just such a beautiful read. I'm literally crying thinking about it right now because it made me just feel so many things, and I don't know, I'm gonna have to reread this one too eventually. I'm pretty sure this one broke my heart a lot more than Beach Read, and I connected this one a lot more than Beach Read just because there was like the friendship element, and obviously I'm a girl in my 20s, so I definitely relate to that of like the growing up and growing apart and everything like that, and I feel like a lot of people do. No matter what age you are, you've definitely had at least one relationship probably like that, so I recommend this to literally everybody. This book was so beautifully written, definitely my favorite book by her yet. Favorite romance of the year, I loved it. Coming in at number 2 is a part of the ACOTAR series. Now this specific one that I have right here might come as a surprise to you because this is a very unpopular opinion as to what my favorite is, and I could have put the other book that everybody else loves in here too, but I just wanted to pick like a series and pick my favorite one for the series just so you guys could get like more book recs out of this too. And the specific book that I loved the most out of the ACOTAR series is Aka War, which is A Court of War and Ruin by Sarah J Maas, and a lot of people love Akamath, A Court of Mist and Fury, and I will definitely say that I still love that one, like I was saying earlier. But I want to say that Akamath is more for the romantic girlies. There's a lot of romance in that one, but Aka War is more for the plot girlies. There's so much crazy stuff that happens in all of the ACOTAR books, but specifically this one, the war was mainly in this one, and I don't know what it was. It was just so like tragic and so good, and there was things happening all the time, and I loved it so much. The way I absolutely bawled my eyes out in like the last 150 to 100 pages, like I literally couldn't handle getting through this book because it was so high stakes, and I absolutely like loved it, like low-key looking back on it, because I was so connected to all the characters. Anytime that something would happen to any of these characters, like my heart would go into my stomach. I'd be like like, please don't die, like nothing, no, like they can't, no. It was just such a hard read, but such a good read because of that. The ACOTAR series is kind of hard to explain because again, this is the 3rd book, but the first 3 in the series are like the original trilogy, and they basically follow the main character Feyre, and you get them all from her perspective. And she's a human living in the human world, and basically something happens to where she gets taken to like the fairylands, and she has to live out the rest of her days in Prithian, which is what the fairylands are called, and she goes through this crazy journey and becomes somebody completely different in the span of honestly just one book. But every book she just has so much growth and so much character development, and she's such a strong female character, and I absolutely love her. I also do love Rhysand. I do have to say though, I finished the series, I think my favorite Bat Boy is probably Cassian, but I also do like Rhys. He's just a little cringy sometimes, but yes, this is definitely my favorite, and hopefully someday I will reread this series. Okay, now what you guys are probably all waiting for, my number 1 book of 2023. I actually ended up finding this book and reading it in the Reading Until I Find a 5-Star video, and the way that it was so satisfying because I went through so many books in that video, but to be able to come out with that book, honestly, like it was a journey. But like I found my favorite book of the year. That book is Powerless by Lauren Roberts. This was her debut as an author, and it was also the first book in the little Powerless trilogy that she's doing. The next one comes out next year. It's called Reckless, and the way that I'm so incredibly excited for it, like you guys don't even know. This book is an enemies to lovers romantasy, and the 2 main characters are Kai and Peyton, and it's dual POV, which you know we love. And in this world there are elites and ordinaries. Ordinaries are just like normal humans like us, aka muggles, and the elites have powers, kind of like superpowers. Some of them are better than others, so there's like a scale of them. And a hot minute ago the king was like, elites, let's be real, the ordinaries are plaguing us, even though they're not. So basically if you're an ordinary found in their society, you die. yeah, Kai himself is an elite, and he's actually the king's son and also his enforcer, and also the one normally sent to kill the ordinaries that are found. And Peyton is an ordinary, posing as an elite. And there's also trials, so it's kind of giving like Hunger Games a little bit. Yeah, it was quite literally incredible. I was in this chair, kicking my feet, giggling, laughing, crying. I felt such a connection to these characters. Peyton is the strongest female main character I've ever read about in my entire reading journey. She is so just badass. She's a badass. I love her so much, and she's so strong and determined and just everything. And the way that her and Kai interact, the tension between them, you could literally cut it with a knife, but you probably couldn't even cut it because the tension is that strong. The ending of this book too was kind of crazy. I'm so excited for the second one, like I already said, and I literally am talking so fast. I'm sorry. Can you tell I like this book? I loved it. Actually, not liked. This is a love level book, okay? Like, this is like if my fiance was a book, Luke would be powerless, okay? And all those other guys that, like, Chris Evans, Sebastian Stan, like, still amazing, but they're not the one, you know what I mean? That was actually a really good analogy. I'm a genius, okay? If you've gotten anything from this video, you should read all of these books that I have down here, but please read Powerless by Lauren Roberts. It was a work of art, and Kai Azera has me in a chokehold and probably will for the rest of my life, so I hope that you join the club. Anyways, those are my top 10 reads of 2023. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and you guys should comment your like top 3 reads down below, or maybe top 10 if you can rank them. Honestly, I found that really hard, so I don't want to do that to you, but if you can do it, do it. And also, if you have any thoughts on these books down below, or any books you want me to read, anything like that, also leave those down below too. I love talking about books with you guys. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video. And also, if you want to see me anywhere else on the internet, go ahead and check out my Instagram and my TikTok as well. Okay, I think that's it. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys. Hi, everybody. My name's Katie. Welcome back to my channel. It seems like a bad idea. Okay. This next book, I love how literally every time someone drives by, you can hear it. Isn't that so fun? Bye, guys.